The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall. I play Hera Syndulla on Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you always.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 167.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hi, I'm Robert King, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about the deeper themes and meanings found in everything connected to that galaxy far, far away. Today, we're discussing a couple more episodes of Visions Season 2. Joining me today on the panel are Kathryn Laffrey.
Hello.
And Patrick Mason.
Howdy, howdy.
It's great to have you both with me. Let's just get into this. Today we're talking about episodes 7 and 8 of Visions Season 2. So this is that animated series of short films that don't quite take place in canon, but are inspired by the Star Wars universe. The first one we're going to talk about is called The Bandits of Golak, and the other one is called The Pit. So The Bandits of Golak follows a young man and his even younger sister, and the sister is Force sensitive. The Empire will pay many credits for kids like her, and apparently has already killed their parents, so they flee for their lives aboard a train. After a great chase sequence on the train and nearly getting caught, they get off in the middle of nowhere and seek refuge at a dhaba, which is a sort of truck stop and motel combined. But an Inquisitor has been following them, and they are only saved from the Inquisitor by a Jedi who has been keeping peace at the dhaba. The Jedi takes the girl, Rani, to join more like her, and the boy, Charuk, goes off to find his own way. So as I like to do with all of these Visions episodes, I want to start by talking a little about the animation style, and Kathryn, you're our artist in residence here. Do you have any thoughts or insights about the animators or the animation style here?
I really love this color that they brought to this. Being a studio out of India, they brought all the great colors from India into this. So just like I've heard other Star Wars animators and artists talk about that combination of a little real world, a little fantasy, they did such a good job blending Star Wars with the culture and colors of India. And I really love that. It was fascinating though, when I first watched it, I felt like I was watching an episode of Clone Wars from like the later seasons, because it had almost that same animation feel. And then I decided to watch the little behind the scenes, and to hear them talking about the American artist that they based their painterly style on, then I had to go back and look at it again. So they said that one of the lead design artists had told them to look at the art of Edwin Lord Weeks. And he was an American painter. His family's from Boston, and they were spice and tea traders. And they sent their son out to see the world. This is in the late 1800s into the 1880s. So kind of a trendy thing to do if you had some money, to send your son to see the world. And he also studied his painting, and he was working in the academic style. If you get the chance to look up his artwork, especially his work from India, you're going to start to see what the animators are drawing their inspiration from. These strong contrasts, big expansive landscapes and his work is so photorealistic at times. I had to zoom in to make sure it was really a painting. So it was quite incredible work for the time period.
Wow. Yeah. I did not dig that deep.
Well, you guys keep asking me, so I got to keep digging deeper to come up with new stuff.
Well, this is why we keep asking you.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. I did a little research on the studio itself, which was apparently founded as an international consortium from the beginning. Basically spanning India and Canada. But yeah, with a lot of deep roots in India. And it I don't know. I also loved the color and the vibrancy of it. And the way, I think all of these animators had the challenge to make it feel like its own world and at the same time feel like Star Wars. And I think this studio called 88 Pictures, I think they did a great job at that.
Yeah,
Patrick,
it reminded me a lot of modern video games. That, if you go and pick up whatever the latest Star Wars game that came out, say, God, I'm trying to remember. It's not the Acolyte. It's either way. It's going to be graphically very similar. Maybe not necessarily the gameplay, but the cutscenes. If you watch the cutscenes,
Outlaws the latest one you're thinking of?
I think so. Yeah. And even the gameplay's come just a long way recently in a short amount of time. But it reminds me a lot of sort of the cutting edge. What you find. Very, like you said, very photorealistic, right? It's getting closer and closer and closer to that. Actually looks like people, and so I thought that was pretty interesting.
I'm wondering, have either of you been to India or had any experience in that part of the world, in South Asia? And
I've never been to India, but I had a social studies teacher in high school who had done a summer in India, and to write off his trip as a educational trip, he made us watch all of his movies and slides. So it was quite fascinating. He told us all his little stories and showed some great pictures to us. And then my best friend in high school was from India, and we played softball together. And so she was always sharing her culture, and she lived close to the school. So when there was a break between school and practice, we'd head over to her house, and her mom would always make sure to have out snacks that her American friends could eat without burning their mouths. So yeah.
Nice.
So good old Asha, one of my best friends.
Yeah. I've done a little travel of my own, not to India, but a little bit around China, a little bit around the US and Canada, a little bit around Europe. Little in the Eastern Mediterranean. And yeah, just the vibe of the train, those first shots on the train just brought back both the experiences I've had on packed trains around the world. We don't do that very much here in the US, but other parts of the world, the trains, they just pack them. And it also reminded me a lot of stories I've heard from immigrants and refugees that I've talked to. Just the sense of the depth of the sense of the world in just that kind of initial setting was impressive to me.
It had that kind of epic Hollywood feel too. Like Lawrence of Arabia, kind of just big epic. You could, see this as like a big screen, long movie with all these great, shots of trains coming from the distance and then riders over the hills. Yeah, it just kind of had that big epic film feel.
Oh yeah. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're absolutely like, yeah, those great David Lean kind of cinematographic landscapes and so on. Yeah, especially like when the writers, the oh gosh, what were they called? The insurgents, I should have made a note on this.
There were so many neat names I couldn't remember which goes with what.
But the writers who were coming up along the train and that very much had a kind of classic Hollywood kind of train chase sequence feel to it.
Yeah, I think for me it was interesting because one of the the things I guess the British laid out in India was the rail system while they were in charge of India, right? And then you have the revolution, and then eventually they'll split India and Pakistan, and both of those occurrences you have these very like iconic images of these super packed trains and people fleeing from one place to another, and it's interesting because you have the same sort of thing going on where it's obvious this train is an Imperial train, right? You've got the guy running it, like the engineer up front calling for backup, and the backup are these speeders with stormtroopers on it, and it's got stormtroopers. So it's very similar. Like this is the British Imperial train, but it's being used by these refugees from the British, like to escape.
Right.
You got the same thing with the bandits, these two kids who are using it to escape like the Empire, and you have this some kind of feel. That's what I took away, at least from the use of the train to do this sequence. It was a sort of a callback.
Yeah.
And in the extra behind the scenes, they actually show you the original sketches for those scenes. And they were more like that. It was a classic old train, and the riders were still on horses in these black and white sketches that developed those scenes. So it's neat to see its progress from almost historical photos to Star Wars.
Yeah. I mean, this is something Star Wars has always done well, or maybe it's something that is always an element when Star Wars is done well, is that kind of mashing of genres together and especially that mashing of Eastern and Western genres together. Yeah.
I love the horses. I mean, they weren't horses, but they were, whatever they were awesome.
Yeah.
Those were a lot of fun to watch.
Cool.
The riding beasts.
Yes.
Yeah, they were cool.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things you have to watch it and stop it and just kind of go, oh, wait, what's going on in the background? Kind of like, I mean, any Star Wars, there's so much cool stuff in the background. And there's one scene I stopped it on as the train was going through almost like a tunnel section of the canyon. And I had just gotten done looking at Week's paintings. And there was a scene that looked just like one of his paintings where you have almost a tunnel or an archway, and there's brilliant blue sky behind the archway, and everything else is just kind of chaotic and busy and dusty on the other side. So you're kind of trying to like go from this beautiful blue sky and total chaos.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
It also reminds me of like two other Star Wars, like I was going to say classic, but two other Star Wars train sequences, because you've got the one in The Mandalorian season 2 where he's wearing the stormtrooper armor because they're sneaking into that base.
Right.
And he gets punched and he's like, oh man, this is not good armor. But and then the one from Rogue One with Empiss Nest and them trying to steal the coaxium. And the very beginning of Rogue One starts the same way, right, with the train that they're chasing.
Are you thinking of Solo?
Oh, you're right. Shoot, I am thinking of Solo.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
Wrong movie.
Yes.
I apologize. Please don't roast me. But yeah, Solo. Yeah.
I know a lot of people are trying to forget Solo.
I liked it though.
So did I. Oh man,
It wasn't that bad.
we need to do I don't know if we probably have done an episode on Solo, but I would love to do another one just like revisit it. I think it's worth a revisit. But yeah. Well, let's get into the things that makes this train different, the characters and the what they're doing. I love the dynamic between Charuk and Rani. Their that brother sister dynamic was really powerful, and I just loved what was going on with that. What were your thoughts about our heroes for this story?
It's just neat to see that sibling dynamic, It's all through Star Wars, and this one was a little different because she was just full of mischief and yet so innocent, not realizing that what she's doing is making it really bad for her brother to try to figure things out. The great distraction with the treats was awesome. Playing bandits on the train.
Yeah, it's like he comes up with this game. It's like, okay, I know how to fix this. I'll come up with this game. This bandits game, and it ends up like backfiring on him. My God.
Yeah. How old would you peg them at? I mean, he seems to be like a solid teenager, probably 16 or 8, maybe even 18. But she seemed very young to me.
Yeah, they seem like 6 to 8 years apart almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd call...
if he's 16, she's 8.
Yeah, I'd call her 8 and him like 15 or 16.
Yeah, because she really did seem to like not have a clear grasp of the danger that they were in. And because I didn't get any like intentional like she wasn't taking intentional risks. She was just playing because she's a kid and she plays, and that's how she relates to her brother. And
right, because you see that when she asks about her dad and is he okay, and her brother's like, I don't want to tell you what actually happened, so I'll just tell you he's fine. But it still keeps her in that space of being a kid. It's sort of like the protection of the innocence, but it's also like, if you act like nothing can go wrong for us, then we're dead. Like they're gonna find us and get us.
I feel like she was sheltered for so long that she was allowed to play with her, force powers in a way that she was never afraid to use them. So now she's in a world where she's not sheltered, and it can actually get her killed. So she doesn't quite grasp that yet. I don't think she understands what her brother's going through to try to get her to safety.
Well, that's something that we haven't seen a lot of. I mean, a lot of times the children who are discovering their force powers, it's either like, I'm thinking of the Ahsoka episodes of the Tales of the Jedi, where she was like, it was a thing of wonder and awe, and she was immediately kind of set apart from everyone else. Or it's something to be kind of hidden and kept quiet, and you don't let anyone know about it because it's dangerous. And here she seems to have this freedom to kind of just explore. And it's like, this is just part of who I am. And her brother and her family seem not to have like said, oh, this makes you different. It's just, oh, here's a thing that you do, and that's just part of who you are. And that's, I don't know, I think that's kind of rare in Star Wars stories.
Yeah. I mean, the closest they came to this was in an episode of Rebels, where they were rushing in to save, except they were infants, not children, that were being hunted down. And so it was a little different there because they were completely innocent and unaware that they had force powers. But still, like, Ezra was trying to calm the children by just, they're like, come on, Ezra, you can do this. You're young. He's like, what?
Yeah.
He's trying to calm a crying baby. Like, okay, gotta use the Force somehow, Ezra.
What did you think of that Bandits game they were playing? I loved
I'm trying to remember what they said. What was the phrase? Yeah, they said when they did the hand thing.
It was oh gosh, it was the rhyme was sweets and plunder and feasts and wonder. That's what I'm remembering. I think I've got it somewhere here. Yeah, here I found it. In the pursuit of sweets and plunder, the bandits ride for feast and wonder.
I think it was good. I think it strikes like that kind of I'm too old for kids games chord, but in the this is our connection to each other. Especially when it comes around to the end, like when they do it the second time, when they're saying goodbye effectively, and they're saying like this is our game, right? This is the thing we've come up that makes us us. And I thought it was interesting, the introduction of that is sort of like a way to get her to go along with, we're on this train and we've got to go. And then it being used at the end as this is a way we identify each other. And I could see a further along down the line of them meeting up again and him not recognizing her, right? Because she'll be so much older. And her using that to identify herself to him, and then him understanding who she is, kind of a thing. It's sort of like a secret gesture or signal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or maybe the other way around. Maybe that's why she sent the flute back to him, so that she would recognize him later down the road. There definitely does seem to be this sense that she at least wants to reconnect with him, and he's obviously reluctant to let her go. That line toward the end, we will plunder all the sweets in the galaxy is yeah.
Yeah, it was a sweet moment just to see his care for her, to like not only have to let her go, but to encourage her to go, because he knows that it's better for her to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's
so
a
how'd
lot
you guys
of...
like that Jedi lady?
That was a fun fight scene. That really was.
Oh, it's great.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of reminiscent of like Yoda and Dooku. Like she's all kind of crone-like, and their walking stick, and then suddenly she breaks it apart into two, and she's full-on style 2 fighting.
Oh, yeah. I want an old granny lightsaber someday. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, she was I mean, from the moment she came on screen, I kind of suspected she was a Jedi. She kind of appeared there. There were a couple of the other people at the Daba who were fighting, and she came in and just put an end to it. It's like, no, we keep peace here. This is a place of peace and safety. Yeah, and so I wasn't maybe as surprised as they wanted me to be, but I certainly was delighted. And I thought she was a great match for that Inquisitor. Oh my goodness, I loved the Inquisitor. Can we just take a moment to respect the magnificence of his mustache?
He did look like he had spent some top quality credits on that stash. Like it was a well manicured, taken care of, slicked up, greased mustache. That was sharp.
Yeah,
it was just that classic villain-esque to him. The green skin, the reddish eyes, and then the mustache. You just need a little
yeah, a little twirl the mustache going on.
Yeah.
Oh
my goodness, he was magnificent. Yeah, that whole sequence at the Daba was fantastic. I mean, they come to it, and the first thing that Charuk says is, "There's our destination." But when they arrive, it's like, you can eat here, but you gotta keep moving on. It wasn't really, there are a couple things that weren't explained really explicitly, and I don't think I mind that, like, from a storytelling perspective, because, you know, ultimately it doesn't really matter. And I think it was enough, like, I filled in, oh, they heard that this Daba was a place that they could go to be safe. And they maybe didn't know exactly how or why, but, you know, I'm thinking that the Jedi matron was maybe putting out the word to call refugees, and especially Force-sensitive refugees, from the Empire.
Yeah, you kind of get the feel like their dad knew where to send him, right? He told his boy, okay, take her and go, and you're going to go to this place. Why? Because you'll be safe there. And what that means isn't, like you said, it's never explicitly stated, but I think you're right. I think it kind of harkens back to some kind of information network that says this is a safe place for people who are being hunted by the Empire for one reason or another, without bringing the whole Force word into it, because that can get you in trouble.
Yeah. The other thing that I kind of had a question about was, who was it that was levitating all the dishes of food? We know the first time it was Ronnie, and she was kind of playing with her brother, kind of levitating the food above his head, and he's like, "Stop playing! We can't. This is not something to play around with." And she shows that she doesn't have complete control, because she can't put it down gently. She ends up, like, spilling it on that other guy. But then when the Inquisitor is interrogating them, I don't know, what did you think was going on there?
As soon as Ronnie said, "It's not me," and the way she said it, you had to know that there was someone else there trying to be the distraction.
Mm-hmm.
To try to, you know, and then not only that, but then once everything started swirling around, and you have that great scene of, like, Ronnie's running and the Inquisitor's after her, and everything else seems like it's in slow motion, you knew that there was someone else there helping. And so that's when I was like, oh, it's got to be the old woman.
Yeah, that was my takeaway. Is this was the storm's coming, and I'm going to use this as a distraction. You know, as much as I don't want to cause a fight in my own bar, I'm going to cause a fight in my own bar in order to distract so I can take the stormtroopers out and then deal with the Inquisitor on his own.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's the interpretation that I think Wikipedia took as well. But I read it differently. I read it as the Inquisitor levitating all of those things in order to trick her into saying, "It's not me. I'm not doing it. That's not what I did before." In order to kind of admit that she could do something like that.
You can almost play it both ways then, I guess. Maybe he was levitating, but then the storm was the woman.
Yeah. I think I took the storm as just like a natural phenomenon. I don't know. Interesting.
I don't know. It seemed too perfectly laid out to help them get to each other and eliminate the other threats.
You're absolutely right, though, that when they start chasing each other around, and, like, yeah, Ronnie and the Inquisitor are moving at normal speed, but everything else is in slow motion. I was like, oh, now this is really a fantastic depiction of what it's like to be using the Force. And I mean, we see Jedi do all kinds of things that require, like, incredible speed or reaction time or things like this. But this is the first time I think I've seen it, like, from the inside. Like it feels like everybody else, like the whole rest of the world just slows down. And oh no, this Inquisitor behind me is moving just as fast as I am. Oh no, he's not slowing down. Yeah.
Yeah, that for me, from a visual perspective, that's where it became the most game-like, because
interesting.
The shot of Ronnie with the third person, like hovering kind of right behind her where you're following her, that's like traditional third person when you're playing a video game, of how
sure.
And so it became like even more video game like for me from like an artistic perspective. So and that's kind of where it hit home to me. I was like, why? This reminds me of a lot of stuff and I can't figure out why. And then that scene really hit it home for me. I'm like, oh, that's why. It's a video game.
Yeah. That'd be a tough scene to play in a video game.
Oh, yeah. There'd be lots of timed events. So you had to hit just right. Oh, come on. I did it again. Oh.
Run, dodge. Plate.
Oh, man, that's awesome. And then, of course, we already talked about that fantastic fight when the matron kind of steps in to protect her and to challenge the Inquisitor directly. We were talking about like the British Indian kind of resonances that I think kind of came through for me in the Inquisitor's just utter disdain, like a Jedi in Golak. It's like, how could you have a Jedi here? It's like, like it struck me as like a colonial British person saying, what? Something of my civilization here in this uncivilized place? And yeah, I don't know, that I thought was a really interesting, like there wasn't much to the Inquisitor's character, but that gave him a lot of depth for me.
Yeah.
Like this is the kind of evil that he represents.
Yeah, he definitely was pulling a superiority complex there. Like, how can you be here? Ew.
Yeah, and then that ends up being like the last thing he says with the wound on his throat even. And it's sort of, it's at that moment, it's like both like incredulous and sort of like he's laughing. And you can't really tell if he's laughing at himself or the whole situation or just like the absurdity of all of this. Like he's going down because of this Jedi in Golak of all places. He can't even believe it himself. It's funny even as he's dying.
Yeah, almost a sense of wonder even. Yeah. It's like, wow, who'd have thought that there would be a Jedi in Golak?
And almost kind of like, you guys played us good, because we never would have figured out that there was a Jedi here.
Yeah. And yet they know more are coming, and so they rush to escape. And I don't know if there was any intentionality behind, the parting of the waters to lead to freedom. That's certainly an image that resonates a lot with us as Catholics. But
little baptism to her new life as a Jedi.
Yeah.
Yes. Does she also bathe in the living waters?
Never know.
Tell you what, though, that bar has the best backdoor exit of any bar.
Yeah, true. Oh man.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about this. I apologize, but so I'm gonna call her the Jedi grandmother, and I'm saying that because we had another mother in an earlier Visions episode, Screecher's Reach. We had the Sith mother, and doing a compare and contrast on these two scenes, where the Force potential goes along with the grandmother or the Sith mother, it's very interesting to me how different they are. Because in Screecher's Reach, you have the Sith Mother show up, and she, you know, is adamant. I can't remember the main character's name because I couldn't then either. But, you know, no, this isn't for your friends. This is just for you. And you have the same message coming from the Jedi.
Yes,
this isn't for that. You know, sorry, this is safe for her, but not for you. But it's kind of a different setup because the character in Screecher's Reach is trying to escape, you know, her world. She's trying to get to something bigger and better and try to do something with her life or something of that nature. You know, there's better lives than this, right? Whereas Ronnie is trying to escape persecution or death or you know, being frozen in jail at the bottom of an inquisitorial thing on some world, whatever that was in Obi-Wan. You have the Sith Mother coming down in a ship with like blazing light coming out, whereas the Jedi grandmother is coming up from the ground, parting waters, and you have to go down into the darkness to go into the Jedi versus up into the light as the Sith. Like there's a lot of little like intricate juxtapositions they did with these. I don't think the two studios talked about it at all, but they did this really well. Like they're very much connected. And in the end, the character in Screecher's Reach is like looking back as like the door is closing and almost looks like a trap closing around her, and she is got that sort of you know, please be okay with this, and at the same time I'm afraid of what I'm doing. Whereas Ronnie kind of goes in and like they do their little bandit symbol and everything's okay and we're going to be fine, you know. And she gets the lollipop and goes in, and then you have the flute come up from the water, and sort of the completely different feeling you're left at the end of those two scenes. Where Screecher's Reach, you're kind of like you're terrified for the child, whereas in Ronnie's case, you're like she's going to be okay. And I think those are the feelings of the characters in play. Like the girl from Screecher's Reach, her makeshift friend family they're all scared for her. But Ronnie's brother he's like, okay, finally, she's safe. I got to figure out what I'm going to do with my life, but she's safe, you know? Yeah. So I was just sitting there watching it for the third or fourth time, and I was like, and it just like a Mack truck hit me. I'm like, oh my gosh, these two scenes, they're almost the same, but like completely different, like turned on each other's heads. They're like a yin and a yang almost.
Yeah.
It fits a quote I saw recently, and I don't know if I'm going to get this completely right, but it was that evil never shows you its naked truth. It always disguises itself in like a vain glory that you perceive as truth. And that's kind of like the way the Sith Mother was, where she was just like covered in her glorious glow. And yet she was the evil that girl should have been avoiding all along. And yet a lot of times we'll see truth as just ugly, boring. And there was the grandma Jedi who is just kind of like, you know, simple granny. You're not expecting it from her, and yet she had the truth. So that's what came to mind.
Yeah, I'm forgetting the passage that, you know, even the enemy can disguise himself as an angel of light. But on the other hand, we must, you know, take up our cross and follow Christ and be buried with him in baptism, right? So going down into the earth with him. And so there's that ironic reversal of, in order to find the true light, you must go into the darkness, and to recognize the darkness, you must see through the false light. Yeah.
Oh, now I want to know if these two studios talk to each other. Because that's so cool.
The more you think about it, you're like, oh my goodness. They did an amazing job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry if I derailed things. It just like it hit me and I was like,
no, that's a really interesting insight. Yeah, I love the ideas it's sparking, and I wish we could spend more time talking about it. But we have to talk about another episode that also has to do with darkness and light in an interesting way. So the next episode, episode 8, is called The Pit, and in it, a group of prisoners are forced to dig for kyber crystals, forming a deep pit in the middle of the desert. A city grows just beyond the pit based on the wealth that's produced from this mine. And the prisoners are abandoned when the kyber finally runs out. One young miner named Crux climbs out of the pit and goes to the city to beg them for help. But there are stormtroopers there who catch him and drag him back to the pit and throw him down to his death. His death, though, inspires a young girl among the prisoners named Livy to raise the voices of all the prisoners, calling on the city folk to follow the light. The citizens come out to see the pit, bringing the light with them, the light of the city with them. And the number of them overwhelms even the stormtroopers, and they are able to rescue the prisoners from the pit. And yeah, I mean, we were talking about the imagery of darkness and light, and how that isn't always clearly intuitive. But again, back to you, Kathryn. The artistic style of this, where did it take you, and what did you see in it?
Oh, this took me back to a lot of the superhero stuff I used to like to watch in the 1970s and early 80s. It has that comic book superhero feel. And then also it had me thinking about the art style that was done in Ricky Tikki Tavi and the White Seal. I don't know if you remember those two. Cartoons. One of them's about a mongoose who saves the family from a cobra.
Yes.
And then the other one's the White Seal, who is basically trying to save his herd of seals by taking them into a island that almost looks like a pit, but shelters them from being hunted. So it's kind of fascinating how it drew me back to some childhood memories. And again, watching the behind the scenes for this was fascinating, listening to the long journey that the creator was on with this. He's been working with Lucasfilms and Star Wars design for quite some time, and then finally being able to produce this, and had a great team to work with in Japan also. And I'm so jealous of the computers they get to work on. Oh my gosh. I do a lot of hand drawing, but people won't realize it's hand drawing because I'm actually drawing on a special computer tablet. So it allows me to, I'm just drawing with a different tool. You know, some people draw with pencil and paper, and a lot of times I'll start with pencil and paper sketch, and then those sketches, and then I'll redraw onto my computer so I can manipulate them quickly and come up with ideas. And they're kind of were doing the same thing. So this whole thing was technically hand drawn, but it was hand drawn on the computer to allow them to incorporate a lot of different things, including light and color and changes and things like that. So that style, kind of that 1970s, you know, hero style, I fit really well, especially, you know, following what Crux went through in this. I mean, I was not happy he fell to his death. So.
I mean, falling to your death is kind of a traditional Star Wars way to go, but it's also usually done in order to avoid showing the dead body. And this, I was kind of impressed with how they showed Crux's body without showing like the graphic violence or gore. They basically just showed his boots there on the ground.
And watching it again, he was the third person to fall. He just fell from the top. But when other people were trying to crawl out, they were at relatively high heights. But when they fell, you only saw them disappear into the crowd and people react. So it kind of took a second watching to see. And then you're like, oh my gosh, it was foreshadowing. You know it was going to be bad as soon as he got to the top.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, considering how short it was, they did a powerful job of like just connecting you to the characters and the intensity of their struggle, I thought.
Definitely had a lot of themes that have been available in other shows that kind of help you get into it.
Yeah.
We have like that episode arc from Andor, where he is like, it's literally almost the same situation, right? It's a bunch of prisoners building something for the Empire, but it's kind of the enforced prisoner slave labor sort of a deal. It's just in a different setting, in a different situation, but it was the same kind of a deal. You know, we're stuck here. Like, they're never going to let us out. Like, even when our time's up. And the whole, you know, their chant was the one way out, right? Whereas this is follow the light, which we eventually get to. But it's the same sort of, like, I think if you've watched Andor, then the minute they hit the ground and you see them all in the same uniform, you know what's going on. Like, you know instantly. Like, this is the Empire doing something terrible, as it always does.
Yeah. Although, as you're saying that, the differences really strike me as well, because in Andor, the big argument was nobody is going to help us. We have to do everything ourselves. We have to break out of this ourselves. No one is coming for us. No one is going to help us. We have one way out, and that's our own strength and initiative. Whereas in the pit, there's this sense that, no, we need to find help. We need to get help from others. We can't do this on our own. But if people just see the injustice of our situation, they will help us. And that kind of difference, not only in like the practical situation, but in the estimation of the human, like the orientation of the human soul. Like, Andor is in a sense very cynical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not just practically no one is going to help us. It's nobody wants to help us. Nobody cares. Whereas in the pit, the message is people will care if they see, if they follow their own inner light. Everyone has that inner light. And they'll do what is right if they follow their light. And even Crux climbing out, wasn't able to make it on his own. There was that sort of mole armadillo creature.
Yeah, it's a cool little critter making the handhold swim.
Yeah. And I remember like just visually, I was thinking, man, this reminds me a lot of like the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight sequence where Bruce Wayne is climbing out of that pit. But in this animation, I found it much more moving, partly because the stakes were higher, and partly because he wasn't doing it on his own. He was trusting in the help of others.
Yeah. And it was fascinating too. In the behind the scenes, they talk about the audio that they did for that sequence, where down in the pit, you hear the echoing, and it's almost like a hopeless echo. And then as he gets up and out of the pit, he becomes clearer and clearer in his voice. And so then when he gets into the city, he has his full voice and no echo, but just projection of, hey, there's something going on out there that you don't know about. You got to know that we need you, So I thought that was pretty well done. Just, acoustically, the escape from the pit. Yeah. But it was interesting. It really makes you think about sometimes how we get so disconnected from each other. Like we miss the source of what we use every day. You think about the people in that city there, probably had no idea, where the kyber crystals came from, where their energy source came from, where their city came from. We get so disconnected from that in everyday life. I thought this was a good way for people to start thinking about, when you buy something, where's it come from? Who made it? We're not alone in this, Nobody's surviving on their own. We're so connected.
What did you think about Livy's character?
Like her sweet, her innocence and all this was just fascinating, considering where she was raised, down in the pit, and yet still held on to, much like we just saw her in the previous one. Was it Ronnie?
Yeah.
Yeah. She had that sweet innocence, that touch of the light within, as Crux would tell her.
Yeah, her existence is, like, it's problematic to me because I'm like, how is she there? Like, because everybody else is an adult, and she's this kid who is a prisoner, or that they were like, let's send her mining. And I'm like,
I think there were other kids down there.
But either way, like that's.
But they were definitely in the background. Yeah, she's the only one who's prominent.
Strikes me as like and there is a question mark about like how long have they been down there? Like how long did it take that pit to get that deep and for the city to get built? Because you kind of have that rather magnificent montage sequence with the pit getting deeper and the city getting bigger in the background and the construction going on. But I like just they're being kids down there. That's kind of horrific in a lot of ways. Because he does say when he's in the city and he's on top and he's talking to all the people, he says there are children down there, and that seems to cue a lot of people in the crowd to be like, wait a minute, there are kids in this pit, So she isn't the only one. You're right. You're definitely right about that. I just, like, in my mind, I'm like, why would you ever conscript children for mining? Like, and then, but hey, it's the Empire, right?
Yeah. Small, nimble fingers to look for shiny rocks.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the striking part about her character. She, despite the horrificness of the situation she's in, and she still believes in the light, right? And that people will do the right thing as long as they see the injustice or know about it. Is a very extremely hopeful character.
Well, it's a hope she gets directly from Crux, right?
That's where this kind of had a Horton Hears a Who kind of feel to it.
Okay, yeah.
Where they're like, "We are here," or whatever they were yelling down in the little fluff. And yet, it took one small voice to make it project out to everyone. And then same thing here, follow the light.
Follow the light. Follow the light. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I don't know what the intention was behind the naming of the characters, but Crux, of course, means cross, and it makes him, in a way, I don't know if he's quite a Christ figure, but he's certainly a prophetic figure who gives his life for those he loves. And Livy, the one who lives, and kind of brings life to the community I don't know, just interesting resonances.
Yeah, that makes sense. And she obviously she's got a connection with the kyber crystal itself, because when she gets the whole group chanting, and it appears like they all have some connection to it, just maybe potentially because they mind it, but she seems to be a focal or a magnifier for them, because once they get the chant going in the pit, it starts affecting the city's coloration. Like, you see the whole city just starts lighting up, like in tone to their follow the light, and that's where everybody starts making their way out of the city to the pit. And you see the two stormtroopers. Oh no, this is bad. We gotta call for backup.
Call for backup.
I'm trying to remember the first time we see them find that larger kyber crystal. I don't remember it singing in the same way that the smaller kyber crystals sang for Livy.
Yeah.
There's just that little bit of like the crystal singing, and they always say that it has a voice that only its Jedi can hear.
Well, and it, very clearly turns blue at the end, kind of, signifying, I think, that she has a calling, a vocation to wield a blue lightsaber.
Yeah. I also like the connection between this one and the next one, Aura's song, because they both, granted it's a chant in one and it's song in the other, but they both use, their God-given vocal instrument, their voice, to awaken the kyber crystal. And I really thought that was an interesting connection between these two. Both of them, these two small girls who were trying to accomplish something, granted very different things, but they're both using their voices to awaken the crystal. That was an interesting concept to me, or connection.
Yeah, I don't want to. I want to jump into that, but it's like, nope.
Come on,
that's our next episode.
No teaser till next time.
You're welcome.
Oh man. Well, maybe this is a good point to say. Are there any final thoughts, connections between these two episodes, or connections between these episodes and the rest of the series? We definitely have talked about themes of light and darkness, and how, in the pit, absolutely, it's finding that light in the midst of darkness. Kind of a similar thing we were talking about, comparing the Bandits of Golak to Screecher's Reach. Kind of the need to go through darkness to find the light. I don't know.
Yeah.
Any other connections or thoughts? Or
it's through those moments of struggle that I think we can grow the most. We can find that we need others and find the light to help us to move on in our faith. Even, it's in those deepest struggles where we reach out to God, and He'll give us the grace we need. He'll never leave us in a situation we can't handle without His grace.
They're both very hopeful episodes, and a lot of the ones these seasons have kind of ended on a very hopeful note. But these two in particular, like, very strong. I think In the Stars was also a very strong, hopeful ending. But these two, you kind of end on this, like, we did what we set out to do, and it worked, and we got to safety basically in both of them. Very different stories, very different, like, settings, and kind of the background theme of what's going on, but they're both in sort of this hopeful genre. I don't know, genre's not the right word, but hopeful subset of episodes in Visions. I always like the hopeful ones better, just because it makes you feel better at the end. But yeah.
Well, we all want hope. We all want something better to come along. There's nothing worse than getting stuck in the muck. It doesn't help.
Yeah, I suppose you could say the plot of both of these episodes is the Empire was oppressing us, but with the help of others, we escaped that oppression.
What's the line? Rebellions are built on hope. And it's somebody said that once. We all have to work together effectively, or we're gonna what's that? We all have to hang together, or for surely we will all hang separately.
Yeah, I think that was Ben Franklin. Right?
I think that was Washington, if I remember right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But either way, one of the two fathers of America.
Yeah. Well, we are definitely going to talk more about this, and I hope when we talk about Our Song, we'll also talk about the series as a whole. That'll I don't think the studios were talking to each other, but there are so many like connections and overlaps between all of these short films. I think I enjoyed season 2 even more than season 1 of Visions, and I enjoyed season 1 quite a lot. So
yeah, and the more I watch it, the more I pick up the connections. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is like that other scene.
Yeah. So there's always more to talk about. As for you, our listeners, we would love to hear your thoughts as well. So give us your feedback. Drop us an email at starwars@sqpn.com. Follow StarQuest on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. We're on Twitter, as long as Twitter is around, at SQPN. My favorite place is our Discord community, and you can get an invite there at sqpn.com/Discord. You can also find previous and eventually future episodes of Secrets of Star Wars at our website, sqpn.com/Star Wars. Subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. We are available everywhere that fine podcasts are streamed, and we even have a YouTube channel. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Star Wars and all the other shows that we have on SQPN. So today we'd especially like to thank Lars S., Dawn H., Cindy M., Daniel C., and Barrett H. Your generous contributions at sqpn.com/give have made it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Wars and all of our StarQuest media. And any of you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So we'll be back next time to discuss the last episode of season 2 of Visions. Until then, Kathryn, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for joining the Secrets of Star Wars.
Yeah, great show. Follow the light.
And Patrick, it's fantastic to have you here. Thanks for being on the panel.
It's great being here. I don't have a catchphrase.
Patrick, I don't have a catchphrase. Mason has joined us today.
You got one now.
And once again, I've been Robert King. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy. The Secrets of Doctor Who. Find the show wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Doctor Who.